Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the deceptive quiet of a sun-drenched suburban park, a place where the biggest worry should be a scraped knee or a melted ice cream cone. But just under the gentle hum of cicadas and the distant laughter of children, a different kind of silence is taking root, a cold, calculated stillness that doesn't belong. We're going to follow an officer and his canine partner as a routine patrol unravels into a chilling mystery, proving that the most terrifying plans are often hidden in plain sight. Honestly, you probably shouldn't be listening to this alone. The story we're about to unpack is a slow burn, one that will make you look twice at the strangers you pass every day. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air in Crestwood Park smells of chlorophyll and diesel, a familiar perfume for any town that pushes right up against the highway. It's 2:30 on a Tuesday afternoon, and the sun is high and generous, casting long, lazy shadows from the oak trees that line the perimeter. For Officer Dan Miller, this is a tail end of a monotonous shift. He sips lukewarm coffee from a dented thermos as he cruises the park's winding asphalt path in his patrol SUV, his partner's rhythmic breathing a familiar comfort from the back. That partner is Dutch, a 6-year-old Belgian Malinois with a coat the color of burnt caramel, and a record of finding things humans are desperate to keep hidden. The playground is a splash of primary colors against the green expanse. Children swarm the plastic slides and metal monkey bars, their high-pitched shrieks of joy a stark contrast to the low rumble of Miller's engine. A few parents are scattered on benches, lost in their phones or chatting amongst themselves. It's a postcard of idyllic American life. It's perfect, almost too perfect. Miller's about to complete his loop and call it a day when Dutch shifts in the back. It's not a big movement, just a subtle lift of the head, a twitch of the ears. Then comes a low, guttural hoof. It's not a bark, not a growl. It's the sound Dutch makes when his finely tuned senses snag on something that doesn't fit the picture. Miller follows the dog's rigid gaze. His eyes land on a man sitting on a bench at the far edge of the playground's sandy border. The man is alone. He's ramrod straight, his posture almost military in its precision. He's wearing gray slacks with a knife-sharp crease, a starched white button-down shirt, and this is the first thing that pings Miller's internal alarm: gleaming black leather dress shoes. They are city shoes, office shoes, completely wrong for a park. An odd detail, but not a crime. The man is holding a large leather-bound sketchbook and appears to be drawing, his hand moving with a fluid, confident grace. He seems clean, not just clean, but sterile, like he's been hermetically sealed and placed on the bench by an invisible hand. There's no casual slouch, no relaxed posture. He's a statue amidst the fluid motion of the playground. Dutch huffs again, a little louder this time, his body now tense. Miller kills the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the sounds of the park. The children's laughter seems more fragile now. This is where the legal gray area begins. The man isn't doing anything illegal. He's just sitting. The ongoing debate about proactive policing hinges on moments exactly like this. At what point does an officer's intuition, sharpened by years on the street and the instinct of his canine, cross the line from observation into harassment? It's a question that keeps civil liberties lawyers and police chiefs awake at night. Miller decides to trust the dog. He always trusts the dog. He grabs his radio. "Dispatch, 7 Adam 12. Show me on a foot patrol at Crestwood Park, playground area. Just checking on a party." He keeps his voice casual, but he's already running through scenarios. He exits the vehicle, the familiar weight of his duty belt a grounding presence. "Easy, boy," he murmurs to Dutch, who is now whining softly, his eyes locked on the stranger. They begin to walk, not directly at the man, but on a long, intersecting arc that will eventually bring them together. It's a non-confrontational approach, designed to look like a casual stroll. As they get closer, Miller's observations sharpen. The man isn't sketching the happy chaos of the children. He's not drawing the trees or the clouds. Through the corner of his eye, he can see the page. It's filled with lines, angles, and what look like architectural schematics. It's a blueprint. He's mapping the playground. A twist of ice forms in Miller's gut. Why would anyone meticulously map a playground? This isn't art, it's a study. He seems utterly oblivious to their approach, his focus absolute. This level of concentration is another red flag. Most people, even engrossed in a task, have a certain situational awareness. They'll glance up when someone approaches. This man is a black hole of concentration. This is all permissible under what's known in law enforcement as the plain view doctrine. Anything Miller can see from a public vantage point is fair game. He doesn't need a warrant to look at what the man is openly displaying in a public park. But what he's seeing is making the hairs on his arms stand up. The sheer weirdness of the situation is escalating. The pristine shoes, the intense focus, the anatomical drawing of a place built for children's joy. A strange, ironic thought hits Miller. The man's obsessive neatness is the very thing making him look so dirty. He's a smudge on the idyllic painting, a discordant note in the happy symphony of the afternoon. Dutch is now silent, but he walks with a rigid, deliberate gait, a clear signal to Miller that the threat, whatever it is real in the dog's mind. They are 10 feet away now. The man has not looked up.
"Afternoon," Miller says, his voice intentionally mild. He stops a respectful distance away, keeping Dutch on a short leash by his side. The dog is a statue of coiled energy, his focus absolute. The man on the bench, Arthur Finch, according to the ID he'll soon produce, finally looks up. And it's not with the startled jump you'd expect from someone so deeply engrossed. It's a slow, deliberate lift of the head, his eyes moving from his sketchbook to the dog and then finally to the officer. His expression isn't one of surprise or fear. It's annoyance, a profound, weary annoyance, as if Miller is a buzzing fly who has just landed on his perfectly prepared meal. "Officer," the man says. His voice is as neat as his clothes, a clipped medium baritone with no discernible accent and a complete absence of warmth. His eyes, a pale, forgettable shade of blue, are analytical. They aren't looking at Miller, they're scanning him, cataloging the uniform, the badge, the weapon, the dog. "Is there a problem?" "Just making the rounds," Miller replies, using the universal police line for "something feels off here. Couldn't help but notice your work. You an artist?" He gestures vaguely toward the sketchbook, which the man has now closed with a quiet, definitive snap. It's an expensive-looking thing, bound in dark brown leather with a brass clasp. The first twist of the encounter is the man's response. He's too prepared. "An architect, actually. I find sketching public spaces helps me keep my perspective skills sharp. The interplay of organic and man-made structures is a fascinating challenge." It's a perfect explanation. Articulate, intelligent, and utterly plausible. But it feels rehearsed, a preloaded answer for a question he knew was coming. Architects sketch buildings, yes, but playgrounds? With this level of forensic detail? Miller asks for identification. The man, Arthur Finch, reaches into the inner pocket of his blazer with a sigh. Producing a slim leather wallet, he retrieves his driver's license without fumbling, his movements economical and precise. Miller takes it. Arthur Finch, age 42. The address is for a luxury condominium building downtown, a good 40-minute drive from this particular suburban park. "You live downtown, Mr. Finch?" Miller asks, handing the license back. "It's a long way to come to sketch a playground. I like the light here in the afternoons, and this park has a wonderful collection of mature pin oaks. You don't find them clustered like this downtown." Again, plausible. But the answer is too poetic, too sterile. It's the kind of thing a robot would say if it were programmed to appreciate nature. It's another contradiction. This man, with his city shoes and his razor-creased slacks, doesn't look like someone who drove across town to admire oak trees. As he talks, Miller notices his hands. They're immaculate. The fingernails are perfectly shaped and buffed to a low sheen. There are no calluses, no ink stains, no graphite smudges. For an architect who supposedly spends his free time sketching in the field, his hands are remarkably, unnaturally clean. This is the odd detail that sticks with Miller, the sheer absence of any evidence of a life being lived. This is where the situation moves from a consensual chat toward a detention. The legal doctrine of Terry versus Ohio allows an officer to briefly detain a person for investigation if they have reasonable suspicion that the person is involved in criminal activity. It's a lower standard than probable cause. Right now, Miller is building his case for reasonable suspicion, one bizarre detail at a time. The shoes, the schematics, the address, the hands. It's a collection of oddities that, taken together, paint a disturbing picture. He hasn't done anything illegal yet, but the totality of the circumstances is screaming that something is wrong. Miller decides to press a little harder, using the dog as a tool. "You don't seem bothered by my partner," he says, nodding toward Dutch. Dutch's pale eyes drift to the dog, a flicker of something that might be academic interest. He's a Belgian Malinois, a fine specimen, bred for intelligence and a high work drive, excellent for scent-based tasks. They can be prone to developing separation anxiety if not handled with consistent discipline. The statement lands with a soft thud in the warm afternoon air. It's too specific. The average person, even a dog lover, might identify the breed, but to know their specific working traits and psychological vulnerabilities, that's not civilian knowledge, that's handler knowledge, or researcher knowledge. It's the second major twist. Finch just revealed a depth of expertise that directly contradicts his persona as a simple architect admiring trees. Miller's internal alarm is now clanging. He's no longer just suspicious, he's concerned. This brings into focus a fierce debate in criminology: the value of behavioral detection. Proponents argue that trained officers can spot these pre-incident indicators, like clusters of anomalous behaviors like Finch is displaying, to stop crimes before they happen. Critics, however, argue it's a pseudoscience that leads to profiling and violates the civil liberties of people who are simply eccentric. Right now, Officer Miller is the embodiment of that debate. Is Arthur Finch a constitutional rights case waiting to happen, or is he something far more dangerous? Miller's gaze drops from Finch's face to the dark canvas messenger bag resting by his perfectly polished shoes. It's a nice bag, just like the wallet in the sketchbook. Expensive, but there's a slight rectangular bulge pressing against the side. "What's in the bag, Mr. Finch?" His tone has changed. The folksy friendliness is gone, replaced with a flat, professional demand. For the first time, Arthur Finch's mask of calm perfection cracks. It's just for a nanosecond, a flicker of what looks like pure, cold fury. Then it's gone, replaced with the same bland, unreadable expression. "My work materials," he says, his voice a little too tight. "Nothing that concerns you, officer." The challenge is laid. The conversation is over.
The challenge hangs in the air, thick and heavy. "Nothing that concerns you, officer." It's a classic deflection, a statement designed to test boundaries, to see if the cop will back down or escalate. For Officer Miller, with Dutch's low, insistent hum vibrating up the leash, backing down isn't an option. The dog's unwavering focus is his probable cause, or at least the foundation for it. Canine alerts are a cornerstone of many police searches, but their legal standing is constantly debated. The Supreme Court case Florida v. Harris affirmed that a well-trained drug-sniffing dog's alert can establish probable cause for a search. However, the open legal debate continues. What about dogs trained for other purposes, like patrol or explosives? How reliable is an alert that isn't for a specific known narcotic? Experts still argue whether a dog's generalized danger signal should carry the same legal weight. Miller is betting his career, and potentially the safety of the children 50 feet away, that it should. "I'm afraid it does concern me now, sir," he says, his voice dropping an octave. "You're in a public park, adjacent to a children's play area, and my canine partner is indicating that there is something in your possession that requires my attention." He doesn't say what the dog is trained to detect. Ambiguity is a powerful tool. Let Finch's imagination do the work. "I'm going to need you to step away from the bag," Arthur Finch doesn't move. He looks from Miller to Dutch, then back to Miller. A strange, thin smile touches his lips. It's not a smile of amusement, it's a smile of superiority. "Officer, you are on a very thin legal precipice," he says, his tone condescending, like a professor correcting a slow student. "My presence here is not a crime. My profession is not a crime. My possessions are private. You have no probable cause, only the vague instincts of an animal." It's a calculated, almost scripted pushback. It's the kind of language a civil rights attorney would use. This is the first ironic twist of this section. The man who is acting the most suspicious is using the very language of the law to shield himself. Miller's patience, already worn thin by the heat and the bizarre encounter, evaporates. "Sir, stand up, turn around, and place your hands behind your back. You are being detained." He unclips his handcuffs. Finch's eyes widen slightly, the mask of condescension finally falling away to reveal a flash of raw panic. He hesitates for a fraction of a second, a moment of calculation, where he's clearly weighing his options. Then, with a sigh of theatrical resignation, he complies. He stands, his movements still precise and economical, and turns around. As Miller cuffs him, he feels the man's wiry strength. There's no fat on him. He's coiled tension. Once Finch is secured, Miller walks him over to the patrol car, well away from the bag. He instructs him to sit on the push bumper, which Finch does with a strange, prim dignity. Now the bag. Miller approaches it with Dutch, who is practically vibrating. The dog nudges the canvas with his nose, sniffs intensely along the seams, and then gives a clear, definitive sit alert. He sits, looks back at Miller, and waits. That's his final indication. It's the canine equivalent of shouting, "It's in here." Miller kneels. The bag is unzipped. The first things he sees are just as Finch described, work materials. There is the expensive leather sketchbook, several finely sharpened pencils of varying hardness, and a set of high-quality architectural rulers. Beneath them, however, is the first layer of truly unsettling items. There are dozens of photographs, printed on glossy photo paper. They're all of this park, Crestwood Park, photos from different angles at different times of day and different weather. Some are close-ups of the playground equipment, the bolts holding a slide in place, the chains of the swings, the base of the merry-go-round. It's obsessive. It's surveillance. Then he finds the blueprints, not sketches but actual rolled-up blueprints. Miller carefully unrolls the first one on the grass. His blood runs cold. It's not a drawing of a building. It's a detailed schematic of the playground's underground infrastructure. It shows water mains, electrical conduits for the park lighting, and most disturbingly, the gas lines that run to the public restroom and concession stand building nearby. How in the world did a civilian get his hands on municipal blueprints? This is beyond strange. This is deeply alarming. It's a level of pre-planning that speaks to a terrifying purpose. The second ironic twist is the mundanity of the items. Separately, they're almost explainable. Photos, he's a hobbyist. Blueprints, maybe he's a contractor bidding on a job. Architectural tools, he's an architect. But together, here, in this context, their innocent nature curdles into something sinister. It's a puzzle, and Miller's looking at the pieces, but the final picture is still horrifyingly out of focus. He continues to dig. Beneath the blueprints, he finds a small, hard-sided case. He opens it. Inside, nestled in custom-cut foam, is a high-end GPS tracker, the kind used by private investigators. Next to it are 3 sets of keys. One set looks like standard house keys. The other 2 are smaller, more industrial-looking keys, the kind used for utility panels or service gates. The most unusual detail he finds, however, is tucked into a side pocket. It's a small, velvet pouch like one for jewelry. He opens it. Inside is not a ring or a watch, but a collection of human teeth. About a dozen of them. They're clean, almost polished. They look like baby teeth. An icy wave of nausea washes over Miller. Photos, blueprints, keys, and a bag of children's teeth. The narrative has just lurched violently into a much darker place. He looks over at Arthur Finch, who was watching him from the bumper of the SUV. his face a blank, unreadable mask. The thin smile is back. He knew what Miller would find, and he knew that as disturbing as it all is, there's still nothing here that is explicitly illegal. Owning blueprints isn't a crime. Owning teeth isn't a crime. It's a collection of horrors, but is it a prosecutable offense? Finch seems to be banking on the idea that it isn't.
The discovery of the teeth changes everything. The air in the park suddenly feels colder, the children's laughter more fragile and distant. Officer Miller carefully places the velvet pouch back into the messenger bag. He stands up, his movements slow and deliberate, his mind racing to connect these disparate, terrifying pieces. He has a man detained who possesses blueprints of the park's gas lines, surveillance photos, utility keys, and a bag of human teeth. The foundation for reasonable suspicion has now solidified into the concrete of probable cause. He's no longer just detaining Arthur Finch, he's arresting him. The charge is nebulous for now, possession of burglary tools maybe, or something more creative, but that can be sorted out later. The priority is getting this man and his bag of horrors away from this playground. Miller radios for backup, his voice flat and professional, betraying none of the cold dread coiling in his stomach. 7 Adam 12 to dispatch, I have one male in custody, I need a transport unit and a supervisor at my location. Crestwood Park. He leaves out the details, no need to cause a panic over the airwaves. As he waits, he continues his search of the bag, hoping to find the final piece that will clarify the awful picture forming in his head. And he finds it. Buried at the very bottom, beneath a false floor in the canvas bag, are two more items. The first is a drone remote control. It's a sophisticated model, with a small screen that would typically show a video feed. This explains the aerial view photos he saw in the stack. They weren't taken from a helicopter, they were taken by a drone, quietly, probably when the park was empty. It's another layer of stealthy, meticulous surveillance. The second item is what makes Miller's heart hammer against his ribs. It's a folded-up receipt from a farm supply store on the other side of the county. The receipt is dated 2 days ago. There's only one item on it: 200 pounds of ammonium nitrate fertilizer. Here, we have a real-world criminal event nexus. Ammonium nitrate is a common agricultural fertilizer, but it's also a primary component in improvised explosive devices, IEDs. The 1995 Oklahoma City bombing, which destroyed a federal building and killed 168 people, used a bomb made from a massive quantity of this exact substance. Since then, the sale of ammonium nitrate has been heavily regulated under the Chemical Facility Anti-Terrorism Standards, CFATS, program, managed by the Department of Homeland Security. Large purchases require ID and are supposed to be tracked. Finch buying 200 pounds isn't illegal in itself if he has a plausible reason, like farming, but combined with the blueprints of gas lines, the surveillance photos, and the drone, it becomes a terrifying precursor to a domestic terrorism event. The irony is staggering. A substance designed to help things grow, to bring life from the soil, is being collected by a man who seems obsessed with a place of life and joy, a playground. But his intentions feel like the complete opposite of growth. The meticulous planning, the sterile demeanor, the cold collection of objects, it all points toward destruction. Miller looks at the receipt, then back at the playground, which is still filled with oblivious children and their parents. The potential target is right there. The motive is a blank, but the means and the method are starting to come into sharp, horrifying focus. He was mapping the gas lines. He bought the primary ingredient for a powerful explosive. The implication is so monstrous, it's almost unbelievable. The odd detail in this section isn't an object, but an absence. As Miller processes the receipt, he glances back at Arthur Finch. The man is still sitting on the bumper, cuffed, but he's not watching Miller anymore. His gaze has drifted back to the playground, and he is smiling. It's not the superior, condescending smirk from before. This is a genuine smile, soft and wistful, filled with an emotion Miller can't quite place. It looks like nostalgia,
or longing? The disconnect is jarring. How can a man who is seemingly planning to commit an atrocity look upon his potential victims with something that resembles affection? It's a psychological contradiction that deepens the mystery and the horror. Is he a monster, or is he something else? Something more complicated and perhaps even more broken. This moment touches on a complex and unresolved theory in criminal psychology, the concept of pseudo-commando attackers. These are mass casualty offenders who are often driven by a deep-seated personal grievance. They plan their attacks with military-like precision, often involving bombs, and tend to have no escape plan because they expect to be killed during the event. Experts still argue about their core motivations. Is it a desire for fame and recognition, a twisted form of suicidal ideation, or a profound, all-consuming rage against a world they feel has wronged them? Arthur Finch, with his meticulous planning and strange emotional state, is starting to look like a textbook example. The backup units arrive, breaking the strange spell. A supervisor, Sergeant Riley, a veteran cop with 25 years on the job, gets out and walks over to Miller. Miller quietly and quickly briefs him, laying out the series of discoveries, the sketches, the surveillance, the blueprints, the teeth, the drone remote control, and finally the fertilizer receipt. Riley's face, normally ruddy and cheerful, hardens into a mask of grim professionalism. He looks at Finch, then at the evidence bag, then at the playground. "Get the kids out of here," Riley says to the other officers, his voice low but firm. "Tell the parents the park is closing early for a gas leak inspection. No sirens, no panic, just move." As the officers calmly begin to clear the playground, transforming the scene of potential horror back into an empty, silent space, Miller is left with a final, chilling thought. He remembers the name on the receipt from the farm supply store. It wasn't Arthur Finch. It was paid for in cash, but the name given to the clerk, printed on the store's loyalty program slip, was John Doe, a name for the anonymous, the forgotten, a name someone uses when they are planning to erase themselves and take a lot of other people with them.
You're in the back of the patrol car now, watching Arthur Finch in your rearview mirror. He sits perfectly still in the cage, hands cuffed behind him, his expression utterly placid. The 40-minute drive from Crestwood Park to the downtown precinct is a study in unnerving silence. He doesn't fidget. He doesn't ask questions. He doesn't protest his innocence or curse his accuser. He simply stares out the window at the passing landscape, his face a mask of detached contemplation. It's the unsettling calm of a man who is not a participant in the chaos, but an observer of it, even when he is at its very center. At the station, the booking process is just as surreal. Finch complies with every instruction with a quiet, frictionless efficiency. Fingerprints, mugshot, surrendering his personal effects, he moves through the machinery of justice as if he's done it 100 times before, or as if he studied the process in a manual. When he's finally placed in a sterile gray interview room, he makes his first and only request. "I will not be answering any questions," he says to Miller and Sergeant Riley, his voice as flat and gray as the walls. "I am invoking my right to counsel. I would like to call my attorney." This is, of course, a fundamental right guaranteed by the Sixth Amendment. The moment a suspect in custody requests a lawyer, all interrogation must cease. It's a bright, uncrossable line. What's strange is that he doesn't use the phone book. He doesn't ask for a public defender. He recites a number from memory. A few minutes later, the call is over. Riley and Miller watch him on the monitor from the observation room, sipping burnt coffee. They expect a wait of several hours, maybe even a day. Instead, 22 minutes later, a woman who introduces herself as Eleanor Vance walks into the precinct. She is the human equivalent of a scalpel. Tall, severe, dressed in a ruthlessly tailored gray suit, she carries an air of expensive, intimidating intelligence. She doesn't waste time with pleasantries. She's a high-powered civil rights attorney known for dismantling police cases on procedural grounds. Her arrival this quickly is the first major twist of the interrogation. It means Finch wasn't just prepared for a conversation, he was prepared for an arrest. He had this woman on speed dial. This wasn't a contingency plan, it was part of the main plan.
Vance meets with her client for a short time, then emerges and informs Riley that Mr. Finch will not be answering any questions. However, she says, in the interest of resolving this unfortunate misunderstanding quickly, her client is willing to provide a voluntary statement to explain the contents of his bag. It's a power move. She's controlling the flow of information completely. Miller and Riley agree, and they all file back into the interview room. Vance places a bottle of expensive artesian water on the table for Finch. He nods his thanks, and in a moment of staggering oddity, pulls a neatly folded handkerchief from his pocket, which the booking officer somehow missed, and meticulously wipes the cap before opening it. It's a bizarre, shared ritual of obsessive cleanliness. "Let's begin," Vance says, her voice cutting the air. She has Finch walk the detectives through each piece of evidence, and the story he weaves is a masterpiece of plausible deniability. The blueprints of the park's infrastructure? He explains he's a freelance safety and risk assessment consultant for small municipalities. He was preparing an unsolicited proposal for Crestwood Park to upgrade their aging facilities, hoping to win a contract with the town. The surveillance photos and drone? Necessary documentation to identify potential hazards, cracked pavement, outdated equipment, areas of poor drainage, all part of his proposal. The utility keys, standard equipment for his job, allowing him to inspect electrical and plumbing access points. He has an answer for everything. It's calm, logical, and almost condescending in its coherence. He makes Miller's escalating suspicions sound like the fantasy of an overzealous cop. Then Riley slides the evidence bag with the farm supply receipt across the table. "And the 200 pounds of ammonium nitrate, Mr. Finch, is that also part of your safety proposal?" Finch's expression doesn't change. "I am the volunteer coordinator for the Urban Roots Community Garden Project downtown. We provide fresh produce for several homeless shelters. Ammonium nitrate is an excellent, cost-effective fertilizer for our vegetable beds. You can call the director of the program. She will confirm my position." It's another perfect, verifiable explanation. It will take time to check out, time he's using to his advantage. The entire case, built on a mountain of circumstantial evidence, is beginning to feel like a house of cards in a hurricane. This entire situation brings up the deeply unsettling legal and ethical debate around pre-crime prosecution. Law enforcement is certain they've stopped the man on the verge of committing a horrific act, but he hasn't actually broken the line a way they can prove it yet. At what point does preparation become a prosecutable attempt? Finch and his lawyer are expertly navigating this gray area, knowing that thinking about a crime or even preparing for it is not the same as committing it. Then, Miller pushes the small velvet pouch to the center of the table. "Explain the teeth, Arthur." The room goes silent. For the first time, a genuine emotion breaks through Finch's icy facade. His face crumples. His pale blue eyes fill with tears. His composure, so absolute until this moment, shatters. It's the second and most profound twist of the encounter. He looks at his lawyer, who gives him a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "I were there my daughters," he whispers, his voice thick with grief that feels shockingly real. His baby teeth. Her name was Lily. He recounts a story of his 7-year-old daughter who died 5 years ago. She fell from the monkey bars at a playground, a different playground, in a different city. A rusted bolt gave way. A tragic, preventable accident. "I keep her teeth to remember her," he says, now openly weeping. "And I devote my life to making sure no other parent has to go through what I did. My obsession with park safety isn't a pretense, officer. It's a penance." The confession, if that's what it is, sucks all the air out of the room. It reframes everything. The surveillance, the blueprints, the obsessive focus on a playground. Suddenly it's not the work of a terrorist, but the all-consuming grief of a broken father. It's a brilliant, emotionally devastating defense. It creates doubt, it creates sympathy, and it makes the detectives in the room feel like monsters for even suspecting him. Is it real? Or is it the most sophisticated and manipulative lie they've ever heard? They have no way of knowing. Eleanor Vance stands up. "I believe we are done here," she says, her voice soft but firm. "I expect my client to be released immediately due to a lack of any credible evidence of a crime."
The interview room feels like a vacuum in the wake of Arthur Finch's emotional detonation. His story about his daughter, Lily, hangs in the air, a perfect, tragic explanation for everything.
It's a narrative shield. How can you accuse a grieving father of plotting mass murder when he claims his only motive is to prevent a tragedy like the one that destroyed his own life? Sergeant Riley and Officer Miller are stunned into silence. Eleanor Vance's demand for his immediate release feels less like a request and more like a foregone conclusion. Their case, built on a chain of circumstantial evidence, has just been torpedoed by a tidal wave of reasonable doubt. But Riley is a veteran for a reason. He's seen too many perfect stories fall apart under the slightest pressure. While Vance is busy dismantling their case with legal theory, he's thinking about procedure. "We can't release him yet," Riley states, his voice regaining its authority. "His story, while compelling, needs to be verified, and we still have the matter of the John Doe receipt. Until we can confirm his volunteer status at this Urban Roots and verify the details of his daughter's death, he'll be held on a 48-hour investigative hold. This is a standard police practice, often called a detainer, allowing law enforcement to hold a suspect without formal charges for a limited time while they continue to gather evidence. Its legality is a constant source of debate, with civil rights advocates arguing it can be abused to hold people on flimsy pretexts. In this case, Riley is using it as a crucial lifeline. He needs time. Vance objects strenuously, of course, threatening lawsuits and filing motions, but the hold is granted by a duty judge. The clock is now ticking. They have less than 2 days to either find concrete evidence of a criminal plot or let a man they believe to be a domestic terrorist walk free. The first thing they do is try to verify his story, and here, the first crack in Finch's perfect alibi appears. They call the Urban Roots Community Garden. The director confirms that yes, an Arthur Finch is a volunteer. However, she says he's a new volunteer, having only signed up a week ago. And more importantly, he has never been in charge of purchasing supplies. He certainly wasn't authorized to buy 200 pounds of fertilizer. A small but significant lie. Next, they run a nationwide search for a deceased child named Lily Finch, who died in a playground accident approximately 5 years ago. They find nothing. No death certificate, no accident report, no news articles. They expand the search. Lily, with a different last name. Jane Doe victims of that age. Nothing matches the story he told. The tragic, heart-wrenching tale that shattered his composure and filled the room with sympathy appears to be a complete fabrication. This is the first major twist. The grief that seems so real was just another tool, another layer of his meticulous, sociopathic performance. Armed with these lies, Riley gets a warrant to search Finch's downtown condominium. He and Miller lead the entry team. The apartment is exactly what they expect: sterile, minimalist, and obsessively organized. The furniture is sparse and modern, the colors muted grays and whites. There are no personal photographs, no clutter, no signs of a life lived. It's less a home and more a showroom. They search for bomb-making materials, for the drone itself, for any further evidence of a plan. They find nothing. His laptop is brand new, with no browsing history. His closets are filled with identical sets of gray slacks and white shirts. It's a dead end. Miller, frustrated, stands in the middle of the living room. Something is wrong. The man they saw break down in the interview room, even if it was a lie, had a deep well of emotion to draw from. A person this meticulously controlled, this obsessed with order, must have a place where the chaos lives, a place where the mask comes off. He remembers the layout of the luxury building from the initial briefing. These units have a main floor and a small private basement storage area. "The basement," Miller says to Riley. "We need to check the basement." They find the door in a utility hallway off the kitchen. It's made of solid steel, and unlike the other doors in the apartment, it's secured with a heavy-duty deadbolt that wasn't on the set of keys Finch had with him. This is it, the place where the secrets are kept. After a brief and futile attempt to pick the lock, they call in the fire department to breach the door. The high-pitched whine of the power saw fills the sterile apartment, a violent intrusion into Finch's world of quiet control. This moment highlights a lesser-known but critical aspect of criminal investigation: the significance of locked rooms.
In many cases, from serial killers to spies, a single, inexplicably fortified room within a normal living space has been the key to unraveling the entire conspiracy. It's a physical manifestation of a compartmentalized mind. The door finally gives way with a groan of tortured metal. Officers peer into the darkness beyond. They flick on their flashlights, and the beams cut through the gloom, revealing the truth. And it is far more horrifying than they could have imagined. The basement is not a storage unit. It's a workshop. But it's also a shrine. The walls are covered in soundproofing foam. In the center of the room is a large workbench, spotlessly clean. On the bench are tools for electronics, wiring, and soldering. This is where he was building the device. But the truly chilling part is what covers the walls. It's not blueprints or schematics. It's a collage. Hundreds of pictures of a little girl. The same little girl, with blonde hair and a bright, happy smile. In every photo, she's playing in a park. Crestwood Park. And in the corner of the room, on a small, neat pedestal draped in black cloth, is a simple silver urn. An odd detail stands out immediately. There's a fresh, single white lily placed beside it. The stem is rough, clearly picked from a garden. It's the second, deeply erotic twist. Finch's story was a lie, but it was a lie built around a sliver of truth. There was a lily. A search of public records under the address of the condo, not his name, finally reveals the truth. 5 years ago, the previous tenants of this very apartment, the Peterson family, lost their 7-year-old daughter, Lily Peterson, to a rare and aggressive form of childhood leukemia. She loved Crestwood Park. It was her favorite place in the world. Arthur Finch had no connection to her. He had simply moved into their old apartment, found a box of their forgotten photos, and co-opted their tragedy. He became a ghost, haunting someone else's grief, twisting it into a motive for his own monstrous plan. He wasn't a grieving father, he was a collector of sorrow.
The silence in the basement is a physical presence. The air is thick with the ghost of a stranger's grief, now perverted and weaponized. Miller's flashlight beam drifts from the smiling face of Lily Peterson in the photos to the sterile workbench, then back to the urn. Finch didn't just steal a story, he curated an entire identity around it. He immersed himself in the sorrow of a family he never knew, drawing from it a sense of purpose that had curdled into this cold, meticulous rage. The discovery of the shrine is the final, undeniable piece of the puzzle. It proves premeditation and a deep, pathological obsession that goes far beyond any plausible claim of civic duty or personal penance. With this evidence, the legal ground shifts seismically. They now have proof that Finch lied about his own daughter, which destroys his credibility. More importantly, they have the workshop. Combined with the fertilizer receipt, the blueprints, the drone remote, and the surveillance, the district attorney's office now has enough to charge him not just with state-level crimes, but with federal offenses. Specifically, they're looking at charges related to the attempted use of a weapon of mass destruction under 18 U.S. Code 2332A. This is a critical legal event as it elevates the case from a local police matter to a full-blown federal investigation involving the FBI and the Joint Terrorism Task Force. The resources and sentencing guidelines for federal terrorism charges are vastly more significant, ensuring that Arthur Finch will not be getting out on a technicality. Back in the interview room, the dynamic has completely changed. Miller and Riley, now joined by two stone-faced FBI agents, confront Finch with the photos from his basement shrine. They lay them on the table in front of him. "Who is this, Arthur?" Riley asks, his voice devoid of any emotion. Finch stares at the face of Lily Peterson. His mask of composure doesn't just crack, it disintegrates. A dry, rattling sob escapes his throat. The game is over. He doesn't confess in a flood of words. He simply deflates, the rigid posture dissolving, the intellectual superiority vanishing, leaving behind a hollowed-out man.
The motive, as pieced together by investigators and psychologists in the following weeks, is as bizarre and tragic as his methods. Arthur Finch was a man utterly adrift. He had no family, no friends, no meaningful connections to the world. He was a specter of a person, defined by a profound and suffocating emptiness. When he moved into the Petersons' old apartment and found the box of photos and keepsakes they had left behind in their grief-stricken haste, he didn't see a tragedy, he saw an opportunity. He found a ready-made life, a ready-made sorrow. In Lily's story, he found a pain so immense it could finally fill his own void. The unresolved theory at the heart of his psychology is whether he ever truly believed the delusion. Did he, on some level, convince himself that he was Lily's father, that her pain was his pain? Or was he always consciously a predator, a parasite feeding on the grief of others? Experts who studied his case would argue for years over whether he was a man suffering from a delusional disorder or a psychopath of the highest, most manipulative order. The plan he concocted was monstrous in its symbolic cruelty. He wasn't targeting the children in the park out of random malice. In his twisted logic, he was liberating them. He became obsessed with the idea that the world was too full of potential pain and loss, the kind of loss Lily Peterson had suffered. By destroying the playground, a symbol of childhood joy and innocence, he believed he was performing a grand, merciful act, saving those children from the inevitable pain of life. The playground itself was the target. The gas line running beneath it was his chosen mechanism. The ammonium nitrate was the fuel. It was a twisted, nihilistic philosophy born from a stolen identity. The odd, almost poetic detail that emerges is that the single white lily he placed by the urn each day came from the Crestwood Park public gardens. He was tending to his shrine with flowers taken from the very place he planned to annihilate. The final irony, of course, is the role of Dutch, the canine. Finch had studied police procedure. He knew about dogs trained to sniff for drugs and traditional explosives like C4 or TNT. But what he didn't count on was the subtle, instinctual alert of a patrol dog. Dutch wasn't alerting on a specific chemical he was trained to find. He was alerting on the man himself, on the profound wrongness of him. The dog's primal instinct sensed the dissonance between Finch's sterile appearance and the vortex of cold, predatory intent lurking beneath. The entire elaborate multi-year plot, a plan that involved architectural study, chemical procurement, and deep psychological manipulation, was unraveled by the most basic and ancient of warnings: a dog's bark, a simple, animalistic response to a human predator. Arthur Finch was never a grieving father. He was a void that tried to fill itself with someone else's tragedy. He saw a beautiful, happy memory of a little girl and twisted it into an excuse for mass destruction. In the end, he wasn't brought down by sophisticated surveillance or a clever detective's deduction, but by the gut feeling of an animal who knew on a level humans can barely comprehend that the man sitting on the bench was a wolf hiding in plain sight. The echo of that single low hoof in the quiet of a sunny afternoon saved dozens of lives, a testament to the inexplicable bond between an officer and his partner, and a chilling reminder of the horrors that can hide behind a mask of perfect composure. The case of Arthur Finch leaves a lasting chill on the community, a quiet testament to how narrowly a nightmare was averted. The legal proceedings drone on for months, a slow, methodical process that stands in contrast to the terrifying speed with which his plan was accelerating. In the end, facing an insurmountable mountain of federal evidence, Finch accepts a plea bargain that ensures he will spend the rest of his natural life in a supermax prison, a sterile environment not unlike the one he built for himself. The world will be safe from him, but the questions his case raised linger in the quiet spaces of the town. Parents at Crestwood Park now watch their children with a little less ease, their eyes scanning the faces on the nearby benches with a flicker of suspicion that wasn't there before.
They're grappling with the unsettling knowledge that the greatest dangers don't always announce themselves with a roar, but can arrive silently on a sunny afternoon wearing a perfectly pressed shirt. The story of what almost happened becomes a local legend, a cautionary tale whispered from one generation to the next. It's a story about a man who tried to weaponize sorrow, only to be defeated by the simple, honest instinct of a loyal dog. And as the seasons turn and new children discover the joy of the playground, the tale serves as a permanent, invisible monument to the lives that were saved and to the thin, fragile line between a normal Tuesday and an unthinkable tragedy. Thank you for joining me on this journey tonight. These stories are a reminder of the complexities of the human mind and the vigilance required to keep our community safe. If you found this narrative compelling, a simple like or a comment goes a long way in helping the channel grow. Sharing it with someone who appreciates a slow burn mystery would be even better. We have many more cases to explore together, many more shadows to step into. Until next time, stay safe, be aware, and check on those you care about.